few weeks ago, after I finished playing Yakuza Gaiden, I thought to myself, there are no good games that exist anymore. This got me thinking, what were some of the games I played in my childhood that were really awesome and I liked a lot that I could go back to and experience again? Other than Shadow of the Colossus, because I played that game enough already, okay? After some truly critical thinking on this subject, I remembered. SSX3. I used to like that game, so why not play it again, see if it's still good? And that's the point of this video. SSX3 is kinda similar to Tony Hawk's Pro Skater, but it's also unique from it in a lot of ways. SSX3 has you progress through various races and freestyle events, which just means get the highest score to win. The game has quite a few characters which you can choose from. Some of them are actually pretty cool. At first I didn't think there was really much difference with what character you pick, other than what they do during some of the loading screens, cosmetics, and voice lines they have. But turns out there are actually some practical reasons to choose a character too, mainly to do with the hitbox size of the character and also the tier 1 Uber tricks they have. You might be wondering what actually is Uber. Well, that's what I'm going to explain here, real quick. Go. When you start, you're in Uber level 0. This limits the amount of tricks you can pull off greatly. You're pretty much just limited to spins, flips, and grabs here, which you can combine together. Doing these tricks will fill up your Uber meter, which then will go into Uber level 1 once fully filled up. This lets you do more tricks by holding down any of the trigger buttons, or a combination of the two trigger buttons, and the square button on PlayStation. You can then combine these with your flips and spins from before to create some awesome ass looking tricks. Keep doing these and then you can make it to Uber level 2, which lets you do an even bigger variety of tricks, also using the triggers and square button. These tricks you can actually customize in the menu. Once you've done enough of these tricks, the game will give you all the letters, which will then activate Super Uber. This doesn't let you perform any more tricks, but it does give you infinite boosting temporarily, which can be very useful. Moving on to the main structure of the game is split into 3 zones called the mountain peaks. If you want to, you can just do a specific race or event from the main menu. This allows you to customize various things to your liking, like starting with unlimited speed boost, removing the time limit, or just handicapping yourself by removing things like the multipliers, for example. This won't give you any progress towards anything, and is only really useful if you just want to quickly replay an event with some modifiers. The real meat of this game, though, comes from the Conquer the Mountain mode. Here, you have to participate in the freestyle events and races to get first place, which will eventually allow you to unlock Peak 2 and Peak 3, giving you access to many more areas to snowboard around. All of the entrances to the events are connected through the in-game map in a sort of fake open world design. The open world basically just being mostly narrow paths, with little to do in terms of tricks that lead into the actual event areas, which is pretty lame. There's also challenges you can find throughout each level that will have you do some sort of task like backflipping through some rings, or grinding through a certain area of the mountain. This is the only time I'm going to mention these, because they're pretty boring and don't offer much of interest. Another cool thing about Conquer the Mountain mode is that you have multiple options to unlock the other peaks. The simplest way is to just beat whatever rival you have by completing either all the race or freestyle events, but you can also just reach your earnings goal, which will unlock it as well. This doesn't really impact anything much, to be honest, since 90% of the time you're just going to beat a rival before reaching your earnings goal, but it's a cool idea. Peak 1. As to be expected, Peak 1 is probably the simplest of the peaks, but that's not to say it's bad at all, it's actually really good. It doesn't have the complexity or challenge of the other peaks, but that makes it serve as a great introduction to the game. The one big course freestyle event is pretty cool. It has some memorable moments like going past this train or this lumberyard section. And you know, I love lumberyard. The whole level connects together really well, and it's super clear when you can pull off tricks and when you can't, unlike later levels in the game. It is of course pretty easy considering it's essentially the first level in the game, but it is still done super well, and is a ton of fun to replay even after you've become better at the game and have moved on to harder courses. There's also many small differing paths you can take, which adds just a bit of variety each time you replay it. There's also multipliers scattered around each of these levels, which can really change how you approach certain jumps. Some of these are a complete bitch to get, but it is super satisfying once you manage to reach one and pull out this super high combo, only to have it be multiplied by like fucking 3 times after you land. The other 2 main freestyle events are less interesting, one just being a big super pipe, which is fun, but I don't really have much to say about it, like, wow, look, you go up and down a few minutes and do tricks, this is awesome.
What top 5 you smoking on, Kendrick? Cause my top 5 is Drake.
As you progress through each peak, you might realize, hey, I'm getting a lot of money here. Where am I going to spend it? Well, there are actually 3 main areas you can spend your money. The first one is cosmetics. As you can guess, these have no effect other than making you look pretty swag. but a lot of them actually look really cool, and each character has unique cosmetics as well as some shared ones between characters. The next one is on actually upgrading your character. These are really useful because they let you do things like make your character flip faster, jump higher, go faster. And then there's also edging, which is an unfortunate name, for sure. The last way you can spend your money is by editing your tricks, which I mentioned earlier. All of these tricks cost money in order for you to be able to use them. This gives some nice progression to the game, especially with the character upgrades and cosmetics being super rewarding to get. Next up, I'm going to talk about the races for Peak 1, which there are two of. First one I'm going to mention is Snow Jam, which is cool but doesn't really stand out a whole lot from the other maps. But it does have some cool moments, like you do this huge ass jump into the fog and land in a forest area with these like gigantic ass trees. It's very dreamy and it's super interesting. Other than that, it's mostly your standard map. The other stage is awesome though. It's set in this big city type area and the lighting is super pretty. Very impressive for a PS2 game. This is so impressive in fact that for one section of this stage, my frame rate drops by about 50% for around 30 seconds, despite running on an emulator. But yeah, this map mostly just has some very cool scenery, lighting, and some big jumps. Anyway, after you've completed either all the race or freestyle events, your rival comes up to you and is like, Yo, bro, and then challenges you in a duel. You then unlock another level where you go down a big mountain that's supposed to be the actual peak of the mountain you're on, and either have to race your rival down or beat them in points depending on if you completed freestyles or races. This is pretty cool as it unlocks a pretty damn large level for each of the peaks. These usually contain most of the cool events you see, like you go into this big cave and rocks start falling down, there's a plane that flies by and knocks down bits of snow, and a small avalanche that happens. It's all very awesome. After you beat your rival in this, you unlock the next peak, and also a big race down the mountain where you start at the peak mountain level and go through all the freestyle events or races. This is kinda cool, though it's basically just a combination of all the other levels you played already, so there's not much point to it. Also, if you want to, you can just straight up knock your opponent out at the start, which rewards you with Uber. Moving on to Peak 2, the theme for this one is green. First map is Style Mile. This map is very I mean, it's still good, but compared to the other maps it feels kinda weird. There's so many strange ass twists and turns everywhere that just makes the map a bit confusing. Only like one section of it is particularly memorable too. I don't know, it just feels kinda bland overall. It does have a lot of varying paths though, so that's pretty sweet. Next up is Launch Time. This whole map is just a collection of jumps that should seriously kill a person by form of compression. Anyway, this map is kinda fun. It's very limited and simple. But being able to just go so high up and do tricks is a lot of fun, but that can be said for all big air maps. Overall, simple map. Pretty good. Next up is Schizophrenia. Oh look, another super pipe map. I have a lot to say about this. Next is Ruthless Ridge. Something I didn't mention up until now is that the races in this game are definitely the worser of the two level types, at least in my opinion. The game just isn't really built with racing in mind. Like, I want to do cool tricks and shit, and in a way, racing does encourage that because of the infinite boost Super Uber gives you, but at the same time, you gotta focus on not falling out of first place because you broke your neck doing one more flip than you actually could. Basically, point is, freestyle events are a lot more fun. With that said, this map is not too good. It's filled with so many twists and turns that are just so fucking annoying to navigate. The overall flow of the map is just kinda bad as well. Everything feels disjointed, like they just threw darts at a wall full of small parts of the map, and whatever hit they just connected together with slightly less restrictive narrow paths than the ones present in the main big open world area of each peak. As you can tell, I'm not a big fan of this map at all. If there is some credit I can give it, it's that it probably does work much better as a race map than a freestyle map, so if you do enjoy races, you'll probably find a lot of fun in it. Next up is Intimidator. This map takes all of my complaints from the previous race level and just amplifies it by like 2 times. This map is so fucking claustrophobic and linear, it's crazy. It also has some pretty annoying jumps over big gaps which are easy to fail, and then whoops, your Uber is gone. Then there's also this section where you just go through a tunnel for about 15 seconds. Like, what is the point of this? Is this just a loading screen disguised as a playable section? What is this, legit? The only semi-open section of this map is this little village area, but even that just has rails for you to grind on with no room for adding in a lot of different tricks. The last area you go through is a forest where trees start collapsing around you. This would be really cool if it weren't for the fact that these trees just drop on the main paths that you would normally go through, and are super unclear on how you can avoid them. It's just a hassle to deal with, honestly. If there is one good thing I can say about this map though, it's that the scenery on it is quite unique and really good looking, especially compared to the other race map. Also, there's a narrow part on this map where you can get some easy punches in.
No one wants to sit there and block this bitch all day. I didn't get opened up, I just literally got tired of blocking.
Moving on to the big map of Peak 2, this map is actually the most atmospheric out of all of them, I'd say. It gives that nice cozy feeling you get from games sometimes, both with the ever-present snow particles around the whole map, to the harsh sounds of wind and wolves howling, if you're playing with the big mountain ambience that is. I know you can hear stuff like this on the other maps too, but it's nowhere near as pronounced as it is on this one. And I think it fits the absolute best here. Really beautiful map. But this map isn't all just pretty scenery, it's also really damn good to just do tricks on. It has some super cool jumps too, like this one where the wind actually pulls you towards the side it's blowing towards. That was seriously awesome to do the first time around. It may not have as many jumps as the big level of Mountain Peak 1, but I think it entirely makes up for that. I think this level alone redeems most of the rather subpar ones from Peak 2. On in Peak 3, the first track is Kicked Out. Now let me tell you something about Kicked Out. This map straight up bangs. Every part of this map flows together super well from one jump to a grind. There's no constant turns the game expects you to make. It's an incredible map with jumps and grinds that are placed almost perfectly, and are super fun to do. Also, this map is hard, like really damn hard. It being so hard is part of the fun though. You gotta play really well in order to beat this one. Make sure you get every multiplier, keep combos going for as long as you can, don't flop any of your tricks, and goddamn can it be annoying. Once you finally do it, it feels like the most rewarding thing in the world. One downside to this map is that it's a bit short, but I'll definitely take quality over quantity. I think its shortness might have to do a little bit with the difficulty as well. Much too much. Another pretty simple big air map. It is quite fun though, but there isn't much unique about it. It has two alternative pathways, including a jump that's kinda hard to make, but if you do, you're rewarded with a super big jump. That's about all I have to say. It's cool, it's kinda fun, but it's very samey to the other maps. Perpendiculous. This is another super pipe map. And you know what, I can give this one a little bit more credit. It does have two more super pipes you can make it into and do tricks in. Not that I have any idea about how you're supposed to make it into either of them, but, you know, it's there. I think the developers must have realized that the race maps weren't as good, because Peak 3 only has one single race map. This one does actually make a lot of improvements over the others. It's not so linear, and it has a ton of varying paths you can take, as well as just sort of playing a bit more like a freestyle map in general, with there being more consistent massive jumps throughout. It does still have some annoying turns, but they're definitely less egregious here. I still don't think this is a particularly good map, but you know what, it's alright. The visuals of the map are also an improvement, with the first bit being a harsh blizzard and then the following area calming down a bit. You also ride through parts of a crashed plane. I bet the families of the victims are going to be real happy to see the wreckage of the plane being used in a snowboarding competition. This map also contains some water. You might not expect to be able to swim in this game, and you would be right, but nobody ever said anything about ignoring the water completely. Not entirely sure why, but despite this being Peak 3, which you would expect to be like the craziest blizzard ever, rocks falling down everywhere and shit, the big map of Peak 3 feels significantly safer and more welcoming than Peak 2. The map itself though is good. It is probably still my least favorite out of the three big Peak maps, because not only does it feel a lot shorter than the others, it also feels the least polished and thought out of all of them. It's still a good map, and I don't think any of the big maps are bad at all, but compared to the other two, it just isn't there. There's honestly very few cool jumps or particularly memorable areas. It feels the most simple by far. There is a plane that flies by and crashes, I guess that's pretty cool. But yeah, that's about it. It just kinda seems like Peak 3 probably had some sort of time or budget constraints during its development. One cool thing is that after finishing this level, instead of unlocking another thing where you can just go through all the race or freestyle maps in order for that specific peak, you actually just unlock one that lets you go through every single race for all the peaks for both freestyle and race completion. This means that you can go from Peak 3 all the way down to Peak 1 in just a single session. Overall, I still do like Peak 3 quite a bit, but that's mostly just because of the freestyle map. There's also cheat codes in this game because those used to exist back then. They're pretty cool, giving you access to some characters from the previous games or some other cool character like this guy with his bare ass out at all times. You can also play as a Beaver, which I mean, who wouldn't want to do that? Some of these characters even have their own special moves as well. Overall, SSX3 is quite awesome, and I would recommend it to every person on Earth. See ya.